So this week's Parsha is Parshas Va'eira, begins on page 319 in the Art Scroll Stone Chumash. Page 319. It's Shemos chapter 6, verse 2. That's actually interesting. Okay, yeah, I'm curious about that one. So the parsha begins. Hashem spoke to Moshe and said to him, I am Hashem. I appeared to Avram, to Yitzchak, and to Yaakov as Kel Shakai, but with my name Hashem, I did not make myself known to them. So this is one of the very cryptic psukim in the Torah. What is this talking about? So Rashi says, and really all the commentaries say that when we refer to names of Hashem, Hashem says that they knew him by this name. A name of Hashem means a way that Hashem relates to the world. And Rashi said, and there are different ways that Hashem could deal with the world, and that connection, that way that Hashem's dealing with the world, is called his name. And the first one, he said he appeared to Avram, to Yitzchak, and Yaakov as Kel Shakai. That means that he made promises to them. This is the relationship to the world, that Hashem makes promises. He tells people what's going to happen, and he promised Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov that their descendants would enter the land of Israel, take possession of it, and it'll be their land. But they never saw the fulfillment of those promises. And that's what it means, that they knew me as Kel Shakai, but my name Hashem, which is the four-letter name, the Yod, the Hey, the Vav, and the Hey. So that refers to Hashem who fulfills his promises. They never saw the promises fulfilled. So if they didn't know me by that name as the one who relates to the world in the way that my promises are fulfilled. Until he's saying, but you will know that. This generation will be the one that will actually see that fulfillment of them being taken out of Egypt.
And Abraham said to Hashem,
Ba'me'eda, how will I know?
Ada. Yeah.
Right.
Didn't he address Hashem using the name of Hashem?
So the commentaries talk about that you do find occasionally them addressing Hashem as Hashem, and I think I'll get it, meaning they were aware of that existence. They were aware that that existed, but they didn't know it. And that's another thing the commentaries say. If you look at the way it says, is I appeared to Avram, to Yitzchak, and to Yaakov as Kal Shakai, but with my name Hashem, I did not make myself known to them. Meaning, what the Torah is telling is that he appeared to them as the one who made promises. They knew intellectually that Hashem kept his promises, but they didn't actually see the fulfillment. They didn't know it in the sense that they didn't experience it. So they could refer to Hashem as Hashem because they knew that Hashem is the one who fulfills promises, but they didn't actually witness that.
Right.
Yes. Okay. The Malbim, though, takes another approach, which is actually the Ramban brings a similar idea from the Ibn Ezra, but the Malbim elaborates on it, and that is that the other names of Hashem are, like I said, referring to the different ways that Hashem interacts with the world, the way that Hashem relates to the world, that Hashem might relate to the world in a sense of justice or in a sense of mercy. And he says Kel Shakai, they understand these names mean different things. In general, Kel Shakai means that Hashem puts limits on the world. And that especially that it says that the world, when Hashem said be created, so it started expanding and improving in quality until Hashem said, stop, it's time, stop. Let's leave the world imperfect so man could have some place in the world, some job to do in the world. And that's that Hashem said enough to stop to the world, that Hashem put limits on the world. And that's the Shakai, Kel Shakai. Whereas the four-letter name of Hashem, the Yud, the Hey, the Vav, and the Hey, the root of that word is Havaya. It means existence. And they understand it as Hayahov Haviyah, that Hashem was, is, and will always be, meaning Hashem is the only thing in the world that's existence is and has to exist. Because everything else in the world exists as a result of Hashem wanting it to exist, whereas Hashem's existence isn't dependent on anything else. And so that's really the name Hashem hints as Hashem, not how Hashem interacts with the world and relates to the physical world, but as Hashem truly exists. And and he says that when it comes to the patriarchs and the matriarchs, Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov specifically, that their miracles, their existence really was all within the bounds of nature. There are some miracles in the Midrashim, but in general in the Torah, you don't really find these miracles outside the bounds of nature happening to Avram, to Yitzchak, and Yaakov. And so they knew Hashem within the laws of nature. And the way the Malbim explains this in a very, very deep way is that we know nature is a creation of Hashem. Hashem exists outside the physical world and isn't bound by the laws of the physical world. But in general, Hashem works within the laws, within the rules that He created of physics, all the rules of the physical world. And he compares that to a human being, is that a human being is a physical being. It's there's a body with all its there's a body with everything that goes along with it. We're physical creatures, but at the same time, we have a neshama within ourselves. We have a soul within ourselves, which is of a spiritual nature. And without that soul, there's no conscious, and without that soul, we're just an empty vessel. And we see that when people pass away. So you have a living, breathing person, thinking person, and then when they pass away, the body's still there, but the soul's gone, and they have no life force. And so there's the body, there's the physical aspect of person, and then there's the neshama, the soul within them, which is the spiritual life force that gives life to the physical body. And he says that's true about the physical world as well, is that that you have this physical world with all its rules and laws of physics, but within that there's the soul of that physical world, which is the spiritual aspect, which is Hashem. And our patriarchs were able to see Hashem. They were able to see Hashem not as a physical being with their eyes, but they were able to look at the world and they saw the soul within the world. They saw they saw the life force of the world, which is Hashem, which is godly, which is the spiritual. But it was only within the physical world, and as they lived their lives, they were saved from troubles through. They fought battles, they fought wars, they they had political crises, and they were all solved, and they became wealthy. But this was all. It wasn't overt miracles; it was hidden miracles. It was the life force of the world. It was Hashem directing the world towards them being successful. Whereas Hashem is telling Moshe now that he won't just be living in the physical world with this, we call it nisim nistarim, hidden miracles, that just everything works out for us in our favor and within this world. But now they were going to witness that Hashem exists completely outside that framework, and all the laws of physics, all the laws of the physical world are going to be suspended, and these big miracles are going to take place to show that God exists independent of this world. And that's the Shmi Hashem, the name Hashem, which means Hashem's existence is completely independent of anything else. So that was not known to our patriarchs, meaning they understood that, but they didn't see it, and now we're going to see it. Okay, so continuing on in verse 4, moreover, I established my covenant with them to give them the land of Canaan, the land of their sojourning in which they sojourned. Moreover, I have heard the groan of the children of Israel whom Egypt enslaves, and I have remembered my covenant. Therefore, say to the children of Israel, I am Hashem, and I shall take you out from under the burden of Egypt. I shall rescue you from their service. I shall redeem you with an outstretched arm, with a great judgment. I shall take you to me for a people, and I shall be a God to you, and you shall know that I am Hashem, your God, who takes you out from under the burdens of Egypt. So these are the four expressions of redemption that our sages say that we drink 4 cups of wine in the Seder to commemorate these. That Hashem says that there are 4 different levels of that He's going to redeem us from Egypt. That it begins with, in verse 6, I shall take you out from under the burden of Egypt. that we're going to remove that means we're going to Hashem is going to remove the burden of slavery from on us, meaning we'll still be in Egypt, but the slavery will subside, and that took place when the plagues started. And then it says, I shall rescue you from your service. That said, he'll actually take us out of Egypt, and I shall redeem you with an outstretched arm and with great judgment. Um, That's the alluding to the splitting of the sea, where we're completely where we actually saw our former masters perish, where they even like psychologically we knew that we were free from them because we saw them perish. And then in verse 7, I shall take you to me for a people. That's the final spiritual redemption that will be given the Torah and will be removed from the whatever Egyptian culture and being former slaves of Egypt and become our own people under the Torah. Okay, and then it continues in verse 8, and I shall bring you to the land about which I raised my hand to give it to Avram, to Yitzchak, and Yaakov. And that's the final. It's not part of the expressions of the four expressions of redemption, but some say it's a fifth expression of redemption. They'll be brought to the land that he promised to our patriarchs. And some say that's why we why we set up the fifth cup of wine and call it the cup of Elio. That's to correspond to this fifth expression of redemption that will be brought into the land of Canaan. Okay. So in verse 9 on page 321, so Moshe spoke accordingly to the children of Israel. He gave them this message that Hashem had given him, but they did not heed Moshe because of shortness of breath and hard work. So then Hashem sent him to tell Moshe this. I'm sorry, that Hashem told Moshe to tell Paro to send them out. And then it starts going through the yichus through the lineage of the children of Israel, and it begins on verse 14 on page 321. These were the heads of their fathers' houses, the sons of Reuven. It goes through the sons of Reuven. Then in verse 15, the sons of Shimon. Then in verse 16, these were the sons of Levi. It goes Gershon, Kahas, Merari, and it says how long Levi lived, for 137 years. Then the sons of Gershon were Livni, Shimei, and the sons of Kahas, Amram, Yitzchar, Chavran, Uziel. And then the sons of Merari, and then in verse 20, on page 323, Amram took his aunt Yocheved as a wife, and she bore him Aaron and Moshe. And then, it goes through some more of the lineage. And verse 23, Aaron took Elisheva, daughter of Aminadav, sister of Nachshon, as a wife, and she bore him Nadav and Avihu, Elazar and Isamar. And it goes through Aaron's sons, Elazar, and took for his daughter from the daughters of Putiel, and she bore Pinchas. And then it concludes in verse 26, this was the Aaron and Moshe to whom Hashem said, take the children of Israel out of Egypt according to their legions. They were the ones who spoke to Paro, king of Egypt, to take the children of Israel out of the land of Egypt. This was that Moshe and Aaron. So the commentaries ask here that why is it giving us, it seems to be giving us the lineage of the children of Israel, but it just gives three tribes, Reuven, Shimon, and stops with Levi. So who is this? There's a medrash that says that in the blessings that Yaakov gave to his sons, so all the sons got blessings, except Reuven, Shimon, and Levi didn't really get blessings per se. They actually got rebuke. And here the Torah is telling us, giving us their yichus of those three tribes that got rebuked from Yaakov, to tell us that they themselves were, even though they got rebuked from Yaakov, they were still considered significant and important in the children of Israel, and we still look at their yichus, look at their lineage as an important part of the children of Israel. But what am I saying here? But another medrash says that the Torah is telling us that we're looking for the right leaders of the Jewish people, and it's telling us that it's not just that Moshe and Aaron came from nowhere, and like Moshe's pretty much the king. He's the leader of the Jewish people, the executive leader of the Jewish people, and Aaron was he was the Kohen Gadol, the high priest of the Jewish people. And it's telling us that it's not just random that these people were chosen, but it's looking through the lineage of, first of all, the Bechor, the firstborn of Yaakov was Reuven. It's showing us if you look at the sons of his sons, they were great. They were great men, but they weren't the right people to be these leaders. And then it goes through the next son of Yaakov, Shimon, and we look through the sons of Shimon. Once again, great people and great spiritually, and but not the right people to be the leaders of the Jewish people until we get to Levi and look through the sense of Levi, and we come to Kahas and Amram and his sons, Moshe and Aaron. Here are the people who should be the leaders, and it's telling us that there's a selection process, not I shouldn't say process, but there's a reason why these people specifically were selected because they were the most appropriate to be the leaders. Okay. So in chapter 7 on page 323, Hashem said to Moshe, "See, I have made you a master over Paro, and Aaron your brother shall be your spokesman. You shall speak everything that I command you, and Aaron your brother shall speak to Paro that he should send the children of Israel from his land. But I shall harden Paro's heart, and I shall multiply my signs and my wonders in the land of Egypt. Paro will not heed you, and I shall put my hand upon Egypt, and shall take out my legion, my children of Israel, from the hands of Egypt. I'm sorry, from the land of Egypt with great judgments, and Egypt shall know that I am Hashem, who, when I stretch my hand over Egypt, and I shall take the children of Israel out from among them." So he's telling him that they're going to have these plagues, they're going to be punished, but they won't send out the children of Israel immediately. Hashem's saying, I will harden Paro's heart. I'll give him the fortitude to be able to resist, to say no to sending out, so they'll get more plagues. And there's a purpose to these plagues to first of all, to punish them, to punish the Egyptians, that the world knows that you don't oppress the Jews, um, you don't oppress the Jews without any consequences, and also that everyone knows that Hashem's the one in charge, and even the world's great superpower at the time, Egypt, was completely at the mercy of Hashem, to show the world that God's the one in charge and there's nothing more powerful. So in verse 6, Moshe and Aaron did as Hashem commanded them, so they did. Moshe was 80 years old and Aaron was 83 years old when he spoke to Paro. Okay, and why is the Torah telling us their ages? Why is that significant? So Rabbi Shimon Schwab says that this was actually a message to Paro, that he looks at Moshe. Moshe's 80 years old, and he can look back at history, and 80 years earlier was the time that the decree was for every Jewish boy to be thrown into the Nile, and because that's when Moshe was born, and yet Moshe is still standing before him. And Aaron, being 83, Aaron was born at the time that the midwives were told by Paro to kill every baby boy who was born and make it look like a stillbirth. And in spite of that, these two men are standing in front of him as a demonstration that he's powerless, that he's not as powerful as they feel, that both these people, based on his decrees, should not be standing there, yet they are, to show Paro that he's powerless. Okay, so in verse 8, Hashem said to Moshe and Aaron, saying, when Paro speaks to you, saying, provide a wonder for yourself, you shall say to Aaron, take your staff and cast it down before Paro will become a snake. Moshe came with Aaron to Paro, and they did so, as Hashem had commanded. Aaron cast down his staff before Paro and before his servants, and became a snake. Paro too summoned his wise men and sorcerers, and they too, the necromancers of Egypt, did so with their incantations. Each one cast down his staff, they became snakes, and the staff of Aaron swallowed their staffs. The heart of Paro was strong, and he did not heed them, as Hashem had spoken. So Moshe showed them the sign, and the Medrash says that when Moshe cast down his staff and became a snake, the Egyptians laughed at him. And that's what it says, that Paro brought out his wise men, sorcerers. The Medrash says that they cast down their staff, then he brought the children, and the children did the same thing, and that Egypt was like the center, the world headquarters of sorcery. That's where the greatest sorcerers lived. And Paro laughed. They said, like, you're bringing straw to the source of straw. And I guess the equivalent now was like, this is where we're experts. Why are you're showing us something that any of us could do. And Moshe's answer to them was that that's what you do. When you have something really, really valuable, you don't, let's say a diamond, you have a beautiful, valuable diamond, you don't bring it to, National Diamond Center on the corner. you bring it to you bring it to the place that the biggest experts in diamonds are, so they could look at it and see that this is really special what you have. And he was showing Egypt that you feel that if I did it, if to do signs anywhere else, people would just think, oh, that's sorcery. But I'm coming to Egypt. Moshe is standing in Egypt, which is the world center of sorcery, that they see what he does and they'll recognize that this is no sorcery, that this is something completely different. And this is something way beyond from outside of this world. This is something that's not bound by the rules of this world. Okay. So in verse 16, or backing up to verse 14, Hashem said to Moshe on page 327, verse 14, Hashem said to Moshe, Paro's heart is stubborn, he refuses to send the people. Go to Paro in the morning, behold, he goes out to the water, and you shall stand opposite him on the river's bank, and the staff in his hand. And the staff that was turned into a snake you shall take in your hand. You shall say to him, Hashem, the God of the Hebrews, has sent me to you, saying, send out my people that they may serve me in the wilderness. But behold, you have not heeded up to now. So says Hashem, through this you shall know that I am Hashem. Behold, with the staff that is in my hand, I shall strike the waters that are in the river. They shall change to blood. The fish life that is in the water shall die, and the river shall become foul. Egypt will grow weary of trying to drink water from the river. The river will turn to blood. Okay, and this is the first of the 10 plagues. And I'll go with the Malbim. Okay, so the Malbim explains the 10 plagues, and the Klei also says something very similar to this, is that if you look at the introduction here, it says, what is this plague about? In verse 17, as we said, so says Hashem, through this you shall know that I am Hashem. It's the first, and meaning the plague of blood was to show that I am God. I am Hashem. And the Malbim explains that there are 10 plagues. The last of the 10 plagues, the plague of the death of the firstborn, was what triggered Paro to take the Jews out of Egypt. And that was its purpose, was to get Paro to send the Jews out of Egypt. Where was I here? Oh, yeah. So, and it wasn't really one of the plagues that was there to teach Paro, Egypt, the world a lesson. It was to get him to set the Jews free. The first 9 plagues were really there to teach Paro a lesson, and he says each one is and he says that the plagues are really grouped in 3 sets of 3, and this is the first of the set. The first set of 3 is blood, the frogs, and the lice. And that set of 3 is introduced with, in order that you should know that I am Hashem. And the first 2 of those, the blood and the frogs, came from the river, from the Nile River, which the Egyptians worshipped as a god. But that's where they got their sustenance. And by Hashem having the plague come from their source of sustenance, what they trusted as their, this is what's going to provide for us. That's where their destruction came from. That was a demonstration that I am God. This is not something this is not something you could trust in. The next 3 plagues start with the plague of, where am I? Page 331, the swarm of beasts. So on page 331, verse 16, we have Hashem said to Moshe, arise early in the morning and station yourself before Paro. Behold, he goes out to the water, and you shall say to him, so said Hashem, send out my people that they may serve me. For if you do not send out my people, behold, I will incite against you, your servants, your people, and your houses, the swarm of wild beasts, and the houses of Egypt shall be filled with the swarm, even the ground upon which they are. I'm on page 333, verse 18. And on that day I shall set apart the land of Goshen upon which my people stands, that there shall be no swarm there, so that you will know that I am Hashem in the midst of the land. And this is the next set of 3, the wild beasts. There was the plague where the animals died. There was a pestilence in the animals, and where am I? And they were afflicted by boils. Were in order to deliver this lesson, that in order that you will know that I am Hashem and I'm God in the midst of the land. Meaning, the first plague was to show that I am God, meaning that I exist and I'm the one with power, and nothing else has power. So even their God was the source of their of their punishment. The second set of three plagues was to say, I am God in the midst of the land, meaning not only am I the only source of power, but I'm in the midst of the land, that I'm involved in the world. This is called hashgacha, that Hashem oversees the world, supervises the world, and didn't just create the world and remove himself from it. And this is demonstrated by these plagues, as it says in the with the wild animals, that in verse 18, and on that day I shall set apart the land of Goshen upon which my people stand, that there shall be no swarm there, that you'll know that I am Hashem in the midst of the land. I shall make a distinction between my people and your people tomorrow. This time will come about. That naturally it makes no sense that wild animals will come out of the wilderness and start attacking the cities, but only in the Egyptian areas, not in the Jewish areas. And so that was a demonstration that not only was that was a demonstration that Hashem's involved in the world and what happens, and that this happens to this area, not that area. This happens to this person, not that person. That's being arranged by Hashem for reasons that may be beyond us. But we should know that it's not random. These are true acts of God. Okay, and the next set of three plagues. We'll begin with on page 337, the seventh plague is hail, and then the next two are next week's Parsha. But if you look on page 337 with the plague of hail, verse 14, or I'll back up a little bit to page 336, the bottom of verse 13. Hashem spoke to Moshe, arise early in the morning and station yourself before Paro and say to him, so said Hashem, God of the Hebrews, send out my people that they may serve me, for this time I shall send all my plagues against your heart and upon your servants and your people, so that you shall know that there is none like me in all the world. So the third set of plagues, which is hail, what is it? Borrowed hail, locusts and darkness, are to demonstrate that there are none like me in the midst of the land, meaning that there's no power, there's that God is completely removed from the world and the natural processes of the world, and there's nothing that He can't do. And this is demonstrated by this plague of hail, where you had the Medrash says that it was a mix of fire and water and ice, and they worked together to cause destruction, whereas usually water and fire are two things that oppose each other and they can't exist together. But in this case, the water and the fire both combined to cause destruction, to show that even opposites are things that could be brought together by Hashem. And the commentaries comment that it says here, in verse 14, for this time I shall send all my plagues against your heart. That he's calling, and this is specifically the plague of Barad, of the hail, he's calling it all my plagues. And here the Medrash says, then Rabbi Bachar speaks this out, that that's exactly that demonstration that the hail is all my plagues, because it's not just one element that's attacking them. It's not just that there's a big fire, or there's a big storm, there's ice, there's snow, but everything together is hitting them. They're being destroyed by water and by fire. And like it's almost like there's no refuge. And that's all my plagues are being sent against you. Other commentaries say that it's called all my plagues because there's a buildup here of what's happening. That we had the fifth one, there was an epidemic where all the animals died, so they lost their source of meat. And then they had the hail here that's destroying the ripe. It's destroying like the ripe grains, that are already somewhat solid, so they'll be destroyed by the hail. But the young grains that are less solid were not destroyed by the hail because they're more resilient. They're soft and they get hit and then they just pop right back up. But they were destroyed in the next plague, in the plague of locusts. So here it's starting to build, where it's the one thing after another, things are getting worse and worse and worse, and that's all my plagues. That's what it's referring to. And another thing that it says here in verse 16 on page 337, however, for this I have let you endure, Meaning, I'll back up a little bit in verse 15. For now I could have sent my hand and stricken you and your people with the pestilence, and you would have been obliterated from the earth. However, for this I have let you endure in order to show you my strength so that my name will be declared throughout the world. That he said, I could have just taken had them leave, and there's nothing you could do about it. I could have just destroyed you, but that would just be a disaster. If, that would be just be considered the world. Oh no, a natural disaster happened to Egypt. But he's saying all these plagues, one after another, with a warning before from Moshe that this is going to happen. And then what he says happens, that's a message to them and to the world that God's in control. Okay, so in verse 23, it describes the hail. Moshe stretched out his staff towards heaven, and Hashem sent thunder and hail and fire went earthward. And Hashem rained hail upon the land of Egypt. There was hail and fire flaming amid the hail, very heavy, such as never been in the entire land of Egypt from the time it became a nation. The hail struck in the entire land of Egypt, everything that was in the field from man to beast. All the grass of the field the hail struck, and every tree of the field it smashed. Only in the land of Goshen, where the children of Israel were, there was no hail. And on page 339, Paro sent and summoned Moshe and Aaron in verse 27, and said to them, this time I have sinned. Hashem is the righteous one, and I and my people are the wicked ones. Entreat Hashem, there has been an overabundance of godly thunder and hail. I shall send you, and it shall not continue to remain. So he's saying, I've had enough. I'll send them out to stop this hail. Moshe said to him, when I leave the city, I shall spread out my hands to Hashem. The thunder, pray to Hashem, the thunder will cease and the hail will no longer be, so that you shall know that the earth is Hashem's. And as for you and your servants, I know that you are not yet afraid of Hashem, God. The flax and the barley were struck, for the barley was ripe, and the flax was in its stalk, and the wheat and the spelt were not struck, for they ripened later. And it's telling us Moshe knew that once the hail stopped, they would go back and see that there's still something left. Because, like we said, the less ripe of the grain was softer at that point and therefore more resilient, and it wasn't destroyed. So when they saw that, they were gonna go back on their word and rebel. And in verse 33, Moshe went out from Paro from the city, and he stretched out his hands to Hashem. The thunder and hail ceased, and the rain did not reach the earth. Paro saw that the rain, the hail, and the thunder ceased, and he continued to sin, and he made his heart stubborn, and he and his servants. Paro's heart became strong. He did not send out the children of Israel as Hashem had spoken through Moshe. Okay, shkoyach. Everybody have a great Shabbos and a safe Shabbos.